Coming up on No Pulp, those rivalry battles, they never disappoint. We have plenty of college football to talk about.
Another battle, me and Nick Zelaya today on the Juicer. We'll go head-to-head in college football's biggest topics.
But it's crossover season. Can't leave out basketball. A lot going on the hardwood, too.
Well, we got to finish up football season. There's some big games coming up this weekend. We're going to talk about it.
All that, a lot to get to. So let's get to it. It's No Pulp. It starts right now.
Are we crazy?
Again, you're going over too many times. I can't with you.
When you lose those games, it's tough for those teams.
Mainstream schmainstream.
I am ready to go to battle.
Hello and welcome inside the CitrusTV studios. Along with Ben Shulman, I'm Brad Klein, happy to be with you. And Ben, we couldn't pick a better week to be on the show because college football at its finest this past week with those rivalry games, and we have to start with the biggest rivalry of them all, Ohio State and Michigan. And finally, Big Blue got it done. Sometimes a blind pig finds a truffle. I think that's the saying, right? Michigan finally did it with Harbaugh. They beat Ohio State.
Incredible. I can't say I really saw that coming at all. You know, the streak was 6 in a row for Harbaugh, 10 years for Ohio State that they hadn't lost to Michigan, but a massive win for the Wolverines. A weight lifted off their shoulders. You even saw Juwan Howard screaming his head off on the field with Harbaugh. It was a really entertaining game.
So what do you think this means for Michigan going forward? Because it's a big-time win. No one's going to deny it, and they did it with the 1-2 punch of McNamara and Haskins on the ground predominantly. They opened up the playbook a little bit, but what does this mean going forward for Michigan and their national championship hopes? Because all of a sudden, plenty of elbow room in the college football playoff picture for Big Blue.
It looks like for the first time we could see Michigan contending in that college football playoff. They still have some work to do in this final week. But this is massive for their national title chances, obviously. I still have them in a second tier. I like Georgia. I like Alabama, who I know is not in the football playoff as of right now. But I think Michigan getting in there is all you need to do. Like in college basketball, you get into the dance, you see what happens. This is obviously their best chance since they last beat Ohio State.
Yeah, this is definitely check mark number 1, 2, and 3 off the list for Harbaugh this year, right? Beat Ohio State, figure out the rest later.
It's a huge win, and for Harbaugh, you know, so many people were calling for him to be gone.
Yeah.
And they decided to stick with him.
Might have bought him another year.
Yeah, and I will say, I didn't think they should have stuck with him. I was in the camp that they're not doing enough. He proved me wrong today, though, because that was a massive program-altering win for Michigan over Ohio State. You called that college football's biggest rivalry. I'm going to contend with you. Alabama and Auburn played in the Iron Bowl this week. That was a ridiculous game. Auburn had it in the bag, which is crazy enough. Then Alabama comes back, forces 4 overtimes to win it.
A lot of people are a little disappointed with Alabama right now, and I get it. So often this season we were talking about Cincinnati and not getting that sexy win, right? Alabama's going up against a not very good Auburn team without Bo Nix. And granted, it's on the road. A lot of people were expecting this to be a blowout. It was far from it. I actually walked away a little bit more impressed with Alabama because that is a really tough place to play. Really tough, even without Bo Nix. And the thing is, one of the knocks I have on Alabama teams is they never face adversity. They never face pressure, and they did here. And Bryce Young didn't have his best game, figured out a way. That's impressive.
I agree with you. I don't know if they did more for me. There's still a little bit of concerns with the fact that it took their offense that long to wake up. However, this is a rivalry game, and I think that it's totally different. You throw the records out with a rivalry like this. How many times has Auburn beaten Alabama when they just simply shouldn't have? So I think the fact to get this big win, regardless of where the teams are ranked nationally, regardless of what the perceived talent is on the field, it's huge for Alabama. And now I feel like they've put themselves with that big win in a tough spot in really good position to get themselves back into the conversation for the college football playoff.
A lot was crumbling around Alabama in this game. I feel like third quarter is when Young kind of lost the Heisman, and then the fourth quarter, middle of the fourth quarter, they lost their national championship, and they regained it in pretty much the second overtime, fourth overtime is when it was ended. But really, Alabama A miracle is what we had on the screen. That's what it was, and just a low blow for Auburn fans. We all thought a miracle in Jurgen Hare was amazing. There you go. Sorry, Tigers fans. Hey, bad loss for Auburn, big win for Alabama, even bigger win this weekend for Oklahoma State, and I called it. Big win for me. Bigger win for me or for Oklahoma State over Oklahoma?
You know, I'm going to take Mike Gundy's team, but you're close.
Hey.
You're very close because you did, even when we were assuming Oklahoma was going to make the Big 12 final a couple weeks ago, you said no, it's going to be Oklahoma State and Baylor. So I give you credit there, but what a win this is for the Cowboys. I mean, they've been playing second banana for a long time to Oklahoma, and now they really get to shine. They're not getting a ton of attention from the national stage still, I think. But it's not like Oklahoma necessarily was commanding so much because a lot of people assumed even if they made the playoff this year, even when they made it a couple years previous, that they were just going to get blown out. So I feel like the fact that Oklahoma State is not getting national title talks is only fair given the conference.
Sure. I mean, also, this is a team that's supposed to be built on their defense, and you have a team in Oklahoma who's really struggled with the quarterbacks. We'll get to that in a second. They put up 33 on you. If you score 33 against Oklahoma State this year, you're expecting to win. And Oklahoma walked away loser, and their season pretty much over. Now Oklahoma State's in there. They're not getting much respect because I don't think a lot of people actually believe that there's a good defense coming from the Big 12. And that's fair. I'll believe it when I see it on a national stage if they get a chance to show it in the top 4 in the college football playoff later. But I want to focus in on Oklahoma here for a second. Lincoln Riley moving on to USC. But the quarterbacks have been a problem for him all year, and Oklahoma State running all over the defense. We could talk about that. But Lincoln Riley has been known as the quarterback whisperer. Is that still true after the whole Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler debacle?
I think it is. I mean, the guy has earned his fair share of equity at the quarterback position, producing Heisman after first overall pick after first overall pick. It's hard to say one down year with a guy in Spencer Rattler who really should have been probably the best quarterback in the country is on Lincoln. If it becomes a trend going forward, perhaps, but as of right now, I don't think I can blame Lincoln Riley for what's gone on in Oklahoma.
Tough hand to be dealt. Spencer Rattler kind of lost the locker room, and when your foundational piece loses the locker room and he's not really a key part of what you want to do offensively going forward, hard to win football games like that.
Good thing for Lincoln, though. He doesn't have to worry about that locker room that maybe he's lost. He's headed to USC as of yesterday. That came out. And then today reports that Brian Kelly of Notre Dame is heading down south to LSU. Which of those surprises you more? Both of them a little bit shocking because there was some Lincoln Riley to LSU reports. But which one do you think is more of a wow?
I think the bigger surprise is Brian Kelly because for the past few years, Lincoln Riley's had one foot out the door. To be fair, though, that one foot was probably in Dallas, right, thinking about the NFL. That didn't happen largely because of Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler. I don't think that helped his NFL stock. So he moves on to USC. And the thing is, while Brian Kelly is the bigger surprise, Lincoln Riley is the bigger wow. Because now USC has a chance to reemerge on the mat. That is fertile recruiting ground. That Lincoln Riley, a hip coach, fun coach, high offensive power coach, is going to have no problem attracting young kids.
I think it's massive for college football. When USC is good, the NCAA is happy. Not to mention, we don't have a ton of city schools right now necessarily that are really contending. You get a big market around USC like Los Angeles, that could captivate some parts of the nation that maybe aren't as into college football usually. Now they will be with Lincoln Riley and his fun offenses there.
There's a lot to get to here on No Pulp. We've already gotten to some of it, but even more. And to do that, let's bring in some help. It's Nick Zelaya and Ben Shulman going toe-to-toe on the juicer on the other side right here on No Pulp. Don't turn that dial.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
At Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow.
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it?
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got? Or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby. As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Back here on No Pulp, I mentioned before there's a lot to get to. We needed to bring in some help. It's Nick Zelaya with Ben Shulman, and I'm Brian Klein. It's the Juicer here. We're going to play a little game. It's the Juicer. Put 30 seconds on the clock to debate the biggest topics right now in college football. So slap the 30 seconds on the clock. Let's start with Ben first. Ben, which team lost the most over this past weekend? It was a tough weekend for a lot of different teams out there.
Well, we just talked about it a bit, Brad. I think it's got to be the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'll give you 3 reasons. First of all, 10-year streak of winning against Michigan. Gone. Your biggest rival. That loss knocks you out of chances to make the college football playoff. That's huge. Ohio State lives in the college football playoff. Everyone expected them to go back after the run they made last year. And then the third one, John Harbaugh absolutely dunked on Ryan Day after this game with his born on third triple comment. I think this was a huge moral victory for Michigan, not just on the football field, but all over Twitter, everywhere. Wolverines Nation is flying.
The Buckeyes had a bad weekend, but I can't feel bad for them. They need to lose. They need to get a reality check every once in a while. For me, it's Oklahoma, and it's been possibly the worst 72 hours for the Sooners. We go back to Saturday, you lose to your rivals Oklahoma State, blowing a 9-point lead going into the fourth quarter. All right, bounce back, we'll still get into a bowl game. Let's move on to Sunday. Your coach decides to go to sunny California and go coach USC. So now Lincoln Riley's out of the picture. You lost your head coach. Things are all over the place. Move to Monday. Recruits are leaving. Your backup quarterback Spencer Rattler, who's supposed to be the Heisman favorite at the beginning of the season, he's gone. Oklahoma, I mean, they're all over the place right now.
All right, so the point system here is 1st to 3. The first one's going to Zelaya here. I like your argument. Hey, it goes beyond the football field here, Ben. They lost their coach, and that coach is supposed to be the staple of what they're going to do going forward. Also lost their quarterback, a lot of talent there, losing recruits left and right. So I'm going with Zelaya on this one. Nick, your reward, you get to start the second question here. Biggest overachiever this year?
For me, it's Pittsburgh, and that's the team that was just in the Dome this past weekend. I mean, there were little expectations for a 6-5 team from last year to go 10-2 and play in the ACC championship this upcoming weekend. I'm not saying if they win, they're going to be in the college football playoffs, but you've got a top 5 Heisman candidate in Kenny Pickett, who I hope that NFL team from Denver maybe picks in the draft this year. 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 picks. Jordan Addison out at the wide receiver position, 1,300 yards. I mean, this Pittsburgh team has really done some huge things in 2021.
Pitt has been good, but I think a little bit of it's been a weak ACC. I want to go to the best conference in football, the SEC, and Ole Miss. They had their second 10-win season since 2004. We're talking Eli Manning territory since they've been in that range, and that wasn't supposed to happen. They were picked to be a middle-of-the-pack SEC team. All of a sudden, they might have the most exciting quarterback in the country. It's between Corral and Pickett. I just think for Ole Miss starting to contend again in the SEC, there could be no bigger game than what they had this year.
I don't know. Only one vote for Pittsburgh to win the ACC Coastal. That's exactly what they did. I'm going with Nick on this one. A 2-0 advantage for Nick Zelaya here, Ben. So it's time to start clawing your way back. And you have an opportunity here. We talked about the biggest overachiever. Who's the biggest underachiever?
Well, I got to go with North Carolina. I'm going back to the ACC. This was the preseason number 10 team in the country, in case you forgot. You might have forgotten because of how much of a dud it's been. This was the Sam Howell year. This was the one where he and Mac Brown make a push to win the ACC after 8 wins last year, and instead they barely got to 500. I don't think there's any way to sum up this season better than what they did against NC State last week, where they completely blew a game that they had in the fourth quarter. North Carolina cannot be average with guys like Sam Howell and Mac Brown, yet they were.
Well, I'll bring up another team that was in the preseason top 25, and that's USC. That's really underachieved. I actually had the Trojans in the college football playoffs, which I am really disappointed about. That Keaton Slovis and the Trojans didn't do anything. They went 4-7. They lost by double digits in week 2 to Stanford, and it all just went downhill from there. Of course, you've got Lincoln Riley now coming, so that changes things, but it's the end of the season. This year was not the year Keaton Slovis. He was a potential Heisman candidate coming in, only 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, only 2,000 yards throwing. I expected a lot more out of QB1, and USC just did not perform on the big stage.
All right, so Ben, here comes the comeback. Don't call it a comeback. I think Ben was in it the whole time. He gets the point there. So now, Ben, you're down 2-1. Still have a chance. Your final question, it's worth 2 points. We'll go to Nick to start it, though. Right now, the college football playoff, you're looking at Georgia, you're looking at Michigan, and Cincinnati. Who's that fourth team?
It's Oklahoma State, those Cowboys. I think Mike Gundy has turned this team from a good Big 12 team to an exceptional one. This was a team that wasn't really looked at in the top 25 at the beginning of the year. Now number 5 in the college football rankings. They picked up some big wins back in September. 3 straight top 25 victories, including Baylor, the same Baylor team they play in the Big 12 championship this weekend. If they can get a big win there, I don't see how you can leave a 12-1 Big 12 squad out of the college football playoffs, especially if Georgia can beat Alabama and make the Alabama Crimson Tide a 2-loss team. I don't see Bama taking it. Oklahoma State has that number 4 spot.
Well, let me talk about that. I think Alabama is going to beat Georgia, and that's why I have them as the other team in the college football playoff. Look, we can all joke around, but this is Alabama, and they just picked up a massive win over their biggest rivals. They have some history beating Georgia in big games if you want to go back to the 2018 National Championship, and I really think they have a shot here. If you're concerned about that Auburn game leading into Georgia, well, Alabama lost to Auburn before they ended up beating Georgia in the national championship in 2018. The Crimson Tide know how to get going when the going gets tough, and I have them in the college football playoff.
All right, convincing argument. I'm going with Ben on this one. Hey, the phrase is, we want Bama, me want Bama. Who doesn't want to see Alabama in the college football playoff? And the little historical nugget there, Ben, you swayed me, so good for you. Big-time comeback. Anyone to thank?
You know, first off, my parents, your parents, Nick's parents, really everyone's parents.
I think I'm hearing the music. That means that your thank you is over. And that also means it's time for some college basketball talk. So thank you. Next, Nick, go ahead and try to lick on those wounds because we have to clear some space. College basketball on full display here on No Pulp.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Superheroes?
Just 4 brothers who hate bullies and love this city. Gear up, guys.
Welcome back to No Pulp with Brad Klein. I'm Ben Shulman. Look, Brad, We both love college football. I love talking about it. But college basketball is getting going, and it's been really exciting so far. We got to go to the hard court for at least a little bit of today's episode. And we can't talk college basketball without talking about that Gonzaga-Duke game that happened on Friday. That was maybe the best game of the year, and it was in the first 2 weeks.
Well, first of all, it's good that college basketball is trying to give the fans what they want early and often, right? Gonzaga-Duke, we're ordering that as an appetizer for the menu. The entree's coming up in March, but Duke is showing us what they're capable of here. Paolo Banchero, everyone's going to talk about him. I think he's the #1 pick in the NBA draft, but don't sleep on Wendell Moore. He's a junior. That upperclassman experience, that's going to help Duke in the long run.
Sneaky thing about that win, Banchero out for nearly the entire second half of that game with cramping, yet Duke pulls out the win. They're now the #1 team in the nation. How do you feel about that?
First of all, it's good that Gonzaga has fallen out of favor. It's been a mixed bag for the Zags, and there's a lot to really dissect here. I think Chet Holmgren needs to put on some weight. Might not happen in his first and maybe even only year at Gonzaga. I think Duke deserves it, and it's theirs to lose that #1 rank.
I agree. If you beat the best, you are the best. UCLA with a huge loss to Gonzaga earlier. They're not going to be there. Purdue hasn't proven enough to me. I wish that Purdue would play Duke in the Big Ten ACC Championship, unfortunately, or challenge rather. Unfortunately, they're not. So for now, Duke has to be the #1.
Now, I'll tell you who's not #4. It's Kansas. After a loss to an unranked Dayton team on a buzzer beater, Kansas is now trying to figure some things out. How detrimental of a loss is this for the Jayhawks?
This is basketball, not football. So I really think at the end of the day, it's not that brutal. If they take care of business where they need to, we will still be seeing Kansas back in the Final Four, the Elite Eight, wherever they need to be. And this tournament was a little funky. Alabama got upset by Iona. I'm not too worried about Kansas.
This is a team that beat Michigan State earlier in the year, and I know it's not those classic Izzo teams that we know and love, but ranked 22nd in the nation. That's a good win on a neutral floor. I think Kansas is going to be just fine.
All right, well, Brad, we got to switch over to the women's side now, because you know where there weren't a lot of upsets? In the battle for Atlantis. #1 South Carolina rolled through that tournament, including just completely dismantling UConn. I don't know if they can be stopped.
I think they can. I think it's only UConn, though. I think something that was proven pretty early in this college basketball season, on the women's side especially, it's South Carolina and UConn and everyone else. So UConn is going to have a chance in every game just because they have Paige Beckers on their team, and she was pretty slow. And UConn as a whole was pretty slow in the second half, just 1 of 10 in the fourth quarter. They're going to hit their shots eventually, and UConn's going to keep it close. South Carolina's playing really well right now. Eventually, they're going to hit some adversity. Maybe it's an injury, maybe it's not, but something's going to happen, and UConn's going to compete.
I'm just worried about the depth. Beckers goes cold, doesn't make a bucket after the third quarter. UConn's done. South Carolina, they take out Aaliyah Boston, their best player. Camila Cardoso comes into the game at a full 6'7". That's a problem.
And all of a sudden, no Pulp turns to Pulp right there. Camila Cardoso, the Syracuse transfer. So now we stay on the women's side. Maryland goes from #2 to #8 after 2 losses to ranked teams, good teams. What do you think about the Terps right now and their fall from 2 to 8? Do they belong in that top 10?
So I will say they did have a top 10 win before the back-to-back losses, but if you lose 2 games by 20 points to top 10 teams, you're probably not a top 10 team. I don't think you can hang around if you can't even play with other teams around your caliber. So as good as Maryland is, probably a team that's maybe top 15, top 20, until you beat someone that badly in the top 10, I don't want the Terps there.
But one thing, you look at the Stanford score and you see the Stanford highlights, one thing that doesn't pop up, they only dressed 7 in that game. They've been shorthanded, injuries and illnesses. Maryland's been behind the 8 ball. This is a better team than you think.
It's not that I'm blaming them for that, but unfortunately the rankings are about how well you play on the floor, whoever you have. And right now the Terps aren't playing well enough. Maybe when they get people back, they can get back into it, but we'll just have to find out. What we'll also be looking forward to, Brad, is some great college football games coming up this week. We'll return to the gridiron when we come back. It's No Pulp on CitrusTV.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Wait, why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where the Cavs go on vacation? New York.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Big time show on Citrus TV. No Pulp coming to a close here, and only one way to do it. It's Big Games with Ben Shulman. I'm Brad Klein. Can't wait to dive into these big games, the three big games, the three biggest conference championships of this coming weekend. So let's do it. First, we got to start with Baylor, Oklahoma State in the Big 12. And Ben, I'm thinking this is going to be a fun game. Old-fashioned football, not really Big 12 like we're used to seeing. These are the top defenses in the conference. I like Baylor, though. Top running game in the conference. So in the spirit of old-fashioned, not so Big 12 football, give me the Bears.
I like Baylor, but I like Oklahoma State even more. They have a near comparable rushing game, and I just think they have the momentum right now. The game means more to them. For Baylor, yes, you could win the Big 12. For Oklahoma State, you could make the playoff. I think the Cowboys come out there with a little more fire and pick up the championship. I want to know, though, in perhaps the biggest conference championship of them all, Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC, you know how I feel.
Oh, yeah.
In my huge juicer win that everyone's writing about in the papers, I already said that I think Alabama's going to beat Georgia. What do you think?
I'm thinking it's Alabama, too. I think Alabama needs this win badly. And again, like I said, I was more impressed after the Auburn game with Alabama. They weren't playing their best game, hostile environment. They still figured it out. Give me the Tide there. And now we go to the Big Ten to finish off this big game segment here. It's Iowa, Michigan. I'm Team Michigan here. I think they are playing their best football of the year, riding the wave of the Ohio State win.
I think they're just the better football team. Now, they could Michigan this and find a way to lose the big game that they absolutely have to win, but all indications say this is a Wolverines Big Ten and a Wolverines college football playoff.
Now, Michigan has a lot to say about that. I have a lot to say about this. The final word of the day. We end with the SEC, and my final word is yet another reinforcement that Nick Saban is just one of the greatest to ever do it. We can talk about the national championships and the first-round picks all we want. How's this for proof? 5 coaches from his 2015 staff are now at the helm of Power 5 programs, and 3 of them are coaching against him in the SEC. That's just an incredible number. Shout out, by the way, to Billy Napier for the Florida hire. If you need another reminder about the college football coaching GOAT, that is all you need. Billy Napier coming from Louisiana to Florida. Big time move for him. Don't look anywhere else besides Tuscaloosa to see who is the college football coaching GOAT.
Well, Brad, you should look somewhere else than Gonzaga if you're looking for the #1 pick in next year's NBA draft. Because Chet Holmgren this week, you kind of fell down my board a little bit. You got outplayed by Paolo Banchero. Not enough to put you to #2. I got Chet Holmgren going down to #3 on my draft board because this kid Jabari Smith at Auburn, sure, he might not like Jim Boeheim, but he can really play basketball. He's got all the tools. He's a Jason Tatum light who could turn into a Jason Tatum plus by the time he gets to the NBA. I love Banchero and Smith. Holmgren's great, but he's got to add a little more weight.
Something tells me these guys are all going to the NBA pretty soon, and we're not going to get to talk about them for much longer on No Pulp. But we don't have much time to talk about anything on No Pulp. That's all the time we have for this week's edition. Be sure to check out next week's edition on OTN. But for Ben Shulman, I'm Brian Klein. Hey, also teasing the TikTok here, _CitrusTV_. Can't recommend it enough.